When you find a development site, you need to properly check this out to make sure that you take into account all the different cost implications and some of the things that may be barriers to you gaining planning permission on it. In this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on 5 areas that are really important that you have a look at. There are actually many more areas, and we have produced a checklist which you are free to download. I'll put a link in the description below where you can get a copy of that. Also, when we're talking about free stuff, you might want to get a copy of my book, You a Property Developer. All I do is ask that you pay for the postage and packaging in order for me to ship this out to you. So this is a hard copy, it's not a digital copy, so that you can actually hold it in your hands. So now let's look at the 5 areas that are critical when you are found, or should I say have found, a development site, and you need to be checking these things out. So the first one is utilities, and it's an area that people don't often pay a lot of attention to because particularly if it's in a rural area, then yes, you would consider that you might have to look at utilities. But if it's let's say an infill plot where there's other houses around and you've got this site and you think you can put a house or houses on here, then you might assume that because the utilities are in that area servicing these other houses, that you don't need to check this out. The problem with that is that utilities have a sort of a maximum capacity, and they may have reached that capacity on the site that you are looking at, and therefore you may actually have to bring in the utilities, and that bill is going to fall on you. So I can think of a development site that I was aware of about 2020 where a bunch of self-builders had actually acquired this land between them. There were several plots and they carved it up, and there was a house right next to it, and they assumed that the utilities would be on site. In fact, what they found was that they had to bring those utilities across a field, in fact several fields, which meant that you had to get planning permission, or at least the permission of the landowner to do that. To bring that, there was obviously cabling involved in that, and then they had to also have a transformer station. All of that costs a considerable amount of money. I'm talking about tens and tens of thousands of pounds, and that was a cost that they had not allowed for when looking at the site. That value should have actually come off the price that they paid for the land to make it a viable proposition. The second area is ground conditions. So ground conditions is a kind of funny one because you can actually have 2 sites that are side by side, but they can have materially different ground conditions. So, and that's obviously going to affect the cost of the actual build in those areas. So you need to understand what the ground conditions are. Is it soft land? Has it got clay? They will have all significant impacts on the cost. They'll have impact on the type of foundations that you're going to put in there, but also they may have impact in terms of how you service that site. So for instance, one of the things you need to dispose of is the surface water that comes off the roofs, but the surface water that lies on the paths and the hard landscaping. And that needs to escape somewhere. That can be done by a soakaway, but if you've got clay, for instance, then you're going to have to make an alternative arrangement. Most, if not all, local authorities or water companies will not allow you to put that water into their main sewer, and the reason for that is that their main sewers are really creaking at the edges. Edges is probably the wrong word, but they're creaking. They can't hold the capacity that they're supposed to. They are very old by nature, and therefore what you're finding is that they don't want to increase that capacity by putting in rainwater or surface water. So that's another area that you need to pay attention to. The third area is build costs. You can't make a proper assessment of a site unless you know how much it's going to cost you to build. There's also a second area to that is development costs. We tend to split them up into build costs and development costs. So build costs being the physical structure, The development cost is all the other associated things like landscaping, bringing in utilities, planning permission, and all the other things that don't fall into the physical structure. If you don't know what those costs are, they are essential for you to be able to assess what the value of your piece of land is, and so therefore you need to know what those costs are. The great difficulty about that is that it will vary depending on the different parts of the country that you're in. It will vary depending on very many other areas, and I did a video recently on that. I'll put a link again in the description below, and I'll put a link up there as well to let you understand the complexity of assessing build costs and some of the many pitfalls that people fall into when they don't get this particular area right. The fourth area is what you can get on that site, and there's various metrics that you need to understand there, but essentially what we're talking about is how many houses can you build on that site. So this will vary depending on the type of houses that you are going to put on there, but it'll also vary by the size of houses that you're going to put on there. So let's say that you want to put on a 150 square meter house. Is that 150 square meter house going to be a 2-story house, a 1.5-story house, or a bungalow? Because the footprint area will vary depending on the type of house that you're going to put on there. So they will have different footprint areas. If you put bungalows, it's going to have the largest footprint area for 150 square meters, therefore is going to use more of your land, and therefore is going to mean that you can't get as many houses onto that site. Conversely, if you put on a 2-story house, then you are going to get more houses on there. It's going to have a smaller footprint. A 2-story house is basically going to be half of what the bungalow is. Obviously, you're going to have a proportion of garden ground that is equal to both. But then also that means that perhaps you maybe need a larger road structure in order to get around the site. So there's lots of considerations there when you start to need to understand what you can actually put on that site. So it's not a case of simply saying, well, I'm going to build 150 square meter houses and I'm going to get 5 houses on that site. You've got to actually look at the logistics of the site and understand what it is that you can actually put on there. And that's very important in really coming to a valuation on how much that site is worth. The fifth area is what we call TPOs, or tree preservation orders, and they can have a significant impact on whether the usable area of your site. So for instance, these trees are protected by law. You cannot remove these trees, but it's not just the trees themselves, it's the extent of the roots and how far those roots come out then precludes you from actually building within those areas. So you need to do a search to find out if there's tree preservation orders on your particular site, and then you need to understand the root structure of those particular trees, how far they came out, to give you the usable space that you can use within that site. So that's a very important thing. Now, as I said at the beginning of this video, there's lots of other areas that you need to check, and we do have a plot checklist which you can download for free. There will be, again, as I said, a link in the description below. And don't forget, if you would like a copy of my book, You, a Property Developer, then go to the website with the same name, youapropertydeveloper.com, where you can get a copy. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you are notified of future videos. Also, a like would be great. And there's lots of videos in this channel, so have a look around to see what's available there. There's well over 200 videos now, so there's lots of information that you can consume for free. Until the next time, take care, and I look forward to speaking to you then. Bye-bye.